Silas Thornton's hands were covered in blood when his daughter screamed. He looked up from the dying girl in his arms, a child he'd never seen before, a child nobody wanted, and saw Emmy running toward him across the auction ground, dragging Toby behind her. "Daddy, she's not breathing. Daddy, do something." He pressed his mouth to the girl's cracked lips and forced air into her lungs. Once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. The crowd just watched. Nobody helped. Nobody cared. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, comment your city below. Subscribe now because what this cowboy did next shocked everyone. The girl's chest rose. Silas pulled back gasping and watched her body shudder. She coughed once, twice, then sucked in air like she'd been drowning. Thank God. He gathered her against his chest. Thank God. Daddy? Emmy's voice shook. Is she dead? No, baby. She's breathing. Why won't anybody help us? Silas looked up at the circle of men surrounding them. Ranchers, shopkeepers, men he'd known for years. Not one of them moved. Somebody get the doctor, he said. Bert Holloway spat tobacco into the dirt. Ain't no doctor coming for that. She's a child. She's Cobb's property. Let him deal with it. Silas stood slowly, the girl limp in his arms. Say that again. You heard me, Thornton. That's one of Cobb's workers. Ran off 3 days back. He's been... I don't care who she ran from. Silas stepped forward. Bert stepped back. I care that she's dying and you're standing there talking about property. The law says, to hell with the law. Silence fell over the crowd. Silas felt Emmy's hand grip the back of his shirt. Felt Toby press against his leg. Daddy, Emmy whispered. Let's just go. He looked down at the girl in his arms. Couldn't have been more than 7 or 8. Dark skin gone gray. Ribs showing through torn fabric. Scars on her arms that told stories he didn't want to imagine. Yeah, he said quietly. Let's go. The doctor's office smelled like carbolic acid and old whiskey. Silas kicked the door open and walked straight in. Morrison. Henry Morrison looked up from his newspaper. His eyes went to the girl, then to Silas's face, then back to the girl. Put her down. She needs... I said put her down. On the table. Now. Silas laid her on the examination table. Morrison was already rolling up his sleeves, grabbing instruments, moving with the efficiency of a man who'd seen worse. How long she been out? Don't know. Found her at the auction ground maybe 20 minutes ago. Breathing. Stopped once. I got it started again. Morrison pressed his stethoscope to her chest. Listened. His jaw tightened. What? Silas demanded. Heart's weak. She's burning up. Morrison lifted her eyelids, checked her pupils. Severely dehydrated. Malnourished. He pulled back the remnants of her dress and went still. Jesus Christ. Silas looked. Wished he hadn't. Her back was a map of scars. Old welts layered over new ones. Some still fresh infected oozing. Who did this? Cobb. Morrison's voice was flat. He runs a work farm north of here. Takes in orphans. Colored children mostly. Says he's giving them a trade. This isn't a trade. This is... I know what it is. Morrison grabbed a bottle from his cabinet. Hold her still. This is gonna hurt. The girl screamed when the antiseptic touched her wounds. Silas held her down, while she thrashed, while she cried, while she begged in a voice too hoarse to hear. Almost done, Morrison muttered. Almost done, child. Hold on. It took an hour. By the end, the girl was unconscious again, wrapped in clean bandages, her breathing shallow but steady. Morrison washed his hands in the basin. Didn't look at Silas. She might live, might not. The fever's bad. If it breaks by morning, she's got a chance. And if it doesn't, then you carried a dead girl out of that auction ground. Morrison dried his hands. Thornton, what exactly are you planning to do here? Take her home. Cobb will come for her. Let him. He's got papers, legal guardianship from a magistrate in Helena. In the eyes of the law, I don't give a damn about the law. Silas's voice dropped low. I give a damn about a little girl somebody beat half to death and left to die in the street. Morrison studied him for a long moment. You know what you're starting. I know what I'm finishing. Emmy and Toby were waiting on the boardwalk outside. Emmy jumped up the second she saw him. Is she okay? Is she gonna live? What did the doctor say? Can we see her? Slow down. Silas crouched to her level. She's very sick. The doctor's doing everything he can. But she's gonna be okay, right? I don't know, sweetheart. I hope so. Toby tugged his sleeve. Daddy, who is she? Her name's... Silas stopped. He didn't know her name, didn't know anything about her except that she was small and hurt and alone. I don't know yet, son. Is she coming home with us? Silas looked at his children. Emmy with her mother's fierce eyes. Toby with his thumb halfway to his mouth the way he always did when he was scared. Would that be okay with you? Emmy nodded instantly. She needs a family daddy. We can be her family. Toby. His son chewed his lip. Will she take my room? No. We'll figure something out. Will she eat my food? We have plenty of food. Will you love her more than me? The question hit Silas like a punch. He pulled Toby close, held him tight. Nobody could ever take your place, son. Not ever. You understand? You're my boy. That's never gonna change. Promise. Promise. Toby relaxed against him. Okay, she can come. The girl woke at midnight. Silas had sent the children home with the Pattersons, Martha's old friends, good people who asked questions but didn't push. He'd stayed at the doctor's office, sitting in a hard wooden chair, watching the rise and fall of the girl's chest. Her eyes opened slowly. Dark brown, almost black. They found his face and went wide with terror. She tried to scramble backward, nearly fell off the table. Easy. Silas held up his hands. Easy now. You're safe. Where? Her voice cracked. Where am I? Doctor's office, Willow Creek. Who are you? My name's Silas. Silas Thornton. I found you at the auction ground. She stared at him, chest-heaving eyes darting to the door, the window measuring escape routes. I ain't gonna hurt you, Silas said quietly. Nobody here's gonna hurt you. That's what they all say. I know, but I mean it. She didn't believe him. He could see it in the way she held herself coiled tight, ready to run or fight despite being too weak for either. What's your name? Silence. You got a name, don't you? More silence. Then barely audible Ruth. Ruth, that's a good name. Strong name. I picked it myself. From the Bible. Her eyes flickered with surprise. You know it. Whither thou goest, I will go. Silas quoted. Thy people shall be my people. My wife used to read it to our children. Used to. She passed 3 years ago. Ruth's expression shifted. Just slightly. I'm sorry. Me too. Silas leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Ruth, I need to ask you some questions. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. But I need to know what I'm dealing with. You're dealing with trouble. Her voice went flat. That's what Mr. Cobb always says. Ruth is trouble. Ruth is cursed. Everyone who helps Ruth ends up sorry. Cobb's a liar. He's got papers. Papers don't make him right. Papers make him legal. Ruth's hands clenched in her lap. You should take me back. Before he finds out. Before he comes looking. I ain't taking you anywhere except home with me. Why? The question hung in the air between them. Silas thought about lying, about giving her some noble speech about duty and righteousness. But this girl had been lied to enough. Because my daughter asked me to, he said simply. Because she saw you dying in the dirt and asked why nobody was helping. And I didn't have an answer. Ruth's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back hard. Your daughter sounds stupid. She sounds like her mother. Same thing. Silas almost smiled. Almost. You got fire in you, Ruth. That's good. You're gonna need it. For what? For whatever comes next. Morning came with the fever breaking. Morrison checked Ruth's vitals, changed her bandages, pronounced her stable enough to travel. He handed Silas a bag of supplies, medicines, bandages, instructions written in his cramped handwriting. Change the dressings twice a day. Keep the wounds clean. If the fever comes back, get her to me immediately. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Morrison lowered his voice. Cobb was in town last night, asking questions. Somebody told him you took the girl. Silas's jaw tightened. And he's not happy. He's got 3 men with him. They're staying at the boarding house. Let them stay. Thornton, I heard you. Silas took the bag. Anything else? Morrison hesitated. Watch your back. Cobb's connected. Got friends in the territorial government. If he decides to make this official, then I'll make it official right back. He carried Ruth out to the wagon where Emmy and Toby were waiting. Emmy had brought a pillow and a blanket, arranged them in the wagon bed like a nest. I made it soft for her, Emmy said proudly. So the bumps won't hurt. That's real thoughtful, sweetheart. Silas laid Ruth down carefully. She winced, but didn't cry out. Ruth, these are my children, Emmy and Toby. Kids, this is Ruth. Emmy beamed. Hi, Ruth. I'm 10. How old are you? 8. Ruth's voice was barely a whisper, I think. You think? I don't know exactly. Mama died before she could tell me. Emmy's face softened. Our mama died too, but Daddy takes good care of us. He'll take care of you too. Ruth said nothing, but her eyes moved to Silas, and for just a second that hard wariness cracked. Let's go, Silas said. Long ride home. They made it halfway before the riders appeared. Silas saw the dust cloud first rising from the road behind them. 4 horses moving fast. He pulled the wagon to a stop and reached under the seat for his rifle. Emmy, take your brother and get in the back with Ruth. Daddy! Now Emmeline. She scrambled over the seat, pulling Toby with her. Ruth had gone rigid, her face white. It's him, she whispered. It's Mr. Cobb. Stay down, all of you. The riders came into view, 4 men. The one in front was tall and broad, with a face like granite and eyes that held no warmth. Jedediah Cobb. Silas had seen him before, at town meetings, at the feed store. They'd never spoken, but he knew the type. Men who smiled while they hurt you. Men who quoted scripture while they sinned. Cobb pulled his horse to a stop 10 feet from the wagon. His 3 men fanned out behind him. Mr. Thornton? Cobb's voice was smooth as honey. I believe you have something that belongs to me. Don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. Cobb nodded toward the wagon bed. The girl, Ruth. She's one of my wards. Ran off from my farm 3 days ago. I've been worried sick about her. That's so. It is. Cobb's smile didn't reach his eyes. I've got papers, Mr. Thornton. Legal guardianship. Signed by a magistrate. That girl is my responsibility. Responsibility. Silas tasted the word like poison. That what you call it. Beating a child half to death. Starving her, working her until she collapses. Discipline. Mr. Thornton, these children come from difficult circumstances. They need structure, guidance. They need food, shelter, kindness, not whips and chains. Cobb's smile faded. You're making accusations you can't prove. I can prove them just fine. Got a doctor in town who's seen her wounds. Got witnesses who saw me carry her out of the auction ground more dead than alive. Silas lifted his rifle, not aiming, just making sure Cobb saw it. What I don't have is any intention of letting you take her. The law is on my side. The law can go to hell. Silence. The wind kicked up dust between them. One of Cobb's men, a wiry fellow with a scar down his cheek, reached for his pistol. Silas swung the rifle toward him. "Don't." The man froze. "Thornton." Cobb's voice hardened. "You're one man against four. You've got children in that wagon. Is this really the hill you want to die on? For her?" Silas didn't blink. "Yeah, it is." From the wagon bed, Emmy's voice rang out clear and strong. "And he's not alone. We're with him." "Shut that child up," Cobb snapped. "You don't talk to my daughter." Silas's finger found the trigger. "You don't look at my daughter. You turn around and ride away, and maybe we both walk away from this. Or I put a bullet in you and take my chances with your men." Cobb studied him, calculating, weighing odds. "This isn't over, Thornton." "I know. I'll be back, with the sheriff, with papers, with the full weight of territorial law." "You do that." Silas didn't lower the rifle. "But know this, that girl is under my protection now. You come to my land, you threaten my family, you'll find out exactly what I learned in the war." "What's that?" "How to kill men who deserve killing." The words hung in the air, cold and final. Cobb's jaw tightened. He yanked his horse's reins, turning away. "Let's go," he told his men. "We'll settle this proper." They rode off, dust swirling behind them. Silas didn't lower the rifle until they disappeared over the ridge. "Daddy." Emmy's voice was small now. "Are they coming back?" "Yeah, sweetheart, they're coming back." "What are we going to do?" Silas looked at Ruth. She was shaking, silent tears streaming down her face. "We're going to fight," he said quietly. "We're going to fight, and we're going to win." Ruth's eyes met his. "You can't. He's too powerful. He has too many." "Ruth." Silas reached back and took her hand. Small, fragile, scarred. "I made a promise to you this morning. I don't break my promises. Not ever. But, no buts. You're mine now. Mine and Emmy's and Toby's. Whatever comes, we face it together. That's what family does." Ruth stared at him, searching for the lie, the trick, the betrayal. She didn't find it. Her fingers tightened around his. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." Silas turned back to the road and drove on toward home. Behind him, his children huddled together in the wagon bed, two he'd made with Martha, one he'd found in the dirt. All three of them his. All three of them worth fighting for. The ranch came into view as the sun started its descent. Golden light spilled across the valley, painting everything warm and soft. "There it is," Emmy announced. "That's our home, Ruth. See the barn? That's where the horses live. And see that tree Daddy hung a swing there for me and Toby. You can use it too if you want." Ruth said nothing. Her eyes moved across the property, the house, the barn, the corral, the fields, like she was memorizing it. "It's not much," Silas said. "But it's ours. It's big. You think, Mr. Cobb's place." Ruth stopped, swallowed. "We slept in the barn, 20 of us, on the floor." Emmy made a small hurt sound. "You're not sleeping in any barn," Silas said firmly. "You're sleeping in a bed, a real bed, with sheets and blankets and a pillow. Where? We'll figure it out." They figured it out over dinner. Silas made stew, nothing fancy, just beef and potatoes and carrots from the garden. Ruth ate like she'd never seen food before, 3 bowls. Then a fourth. Then sat back looking almost dizzy. "Slow down," Silas said gently. "It's not going anywhere." "Sorry," Ruth's voice cracked. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "Don't apologize for being hungry. Just pace yourself. There's plenty more." Emmy had been watching Ruth all through dinner, with an expression Silas recognized, the same look Martha used to get when she saw something broken that needed fixing. "Ruth can share my room," Emmy announced. "I've got a big bed. We can fit." "I don't want to take your space," Ruth said quickly. "You're not taking it. I'm giving it." Emmy's chin lifted. "That's different." Ruth looked at Silas uncertain. "If Emmy's okay with it, I'm okay with it," he said. "But Ruth, it's your choice. If you'd rather—" "No." The word came out fast. "No, Ruth's voice dropped. "I've never shared a bed with anyone. Not since Mama." "Then it's settled," Emmy said firmly. "Come on, I'll show you." She grabbed Ruth's hand and pulled her toward the bedroom. Ruth went stumbling slightly, looking back at Silas with an expression he couldn't quite read. Fear, hope. Both. Daddy Toby was still at the table pushing a piece of potato around his plate. "Yeah, son. Is Ruth going to be our sister for real? Would you like that?" Toby thought about it. Really thought the way 6-year-olds do when they're trying to work out something complicated. "I think so," he said finally. "She seems sad, but Emmy's good at making people not sad, and you're good at keeping people safe, so maybe we can fix her." "People aren't things to be fixed, Toby." "Then what do we do?" Silas reached across the table and ruffled his son's hair. "We love them, we show up for them, and we let them fix themselves when they're ready." That sounds hard. It is, but it's worth it. Later that night, after the children were in bed, Silas sat on the porch and watched the stars come out. The summer air was warm and thick with the smell of grass and cattle and the faint sweetness of wildflowers. Crickets sang in the fields. Somewhere in the distance a coyote howled. He thought about Martha, about the life they'd built together, about the dreams they'd had more children, a bigger house growing old on this land they'd worked so hard to own. She'd been gone 3 years now. Sometimes it felt like yesterday. Sometimes it felt like forever. "You'd like her," he said quietly to the stars, or to Martha, or to nobody. "Ruth. She's got fire. Reminds me of you." The wind stirred the grass. That was all. But somehow, it was enough. The screen door creaked behind him. He turned to find Ruth standing there wrapped in one of Emmy's old nightgowns, her feet bare on the wooden planks. "Can't sleep." She shook her head. "Come sit." She hesitated, then crossed to the chair beside him and perched on the edge like she might need to run at any moment. They sat in silence for a while. The crickets sang. The stars wheeled overhead. "Mr. Thornton." "Silas. Call me Silas." "Silas." She tested the name like something fragile. "Why are you doing this?" "We talked about this already." "I know, but I still don't understand." Ruth's hands twisted in her lap. "People don't help me. They don't. Even the nice ones. They try for a while and then they stop. They always stop." Silas was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "My wife Martha, she believed everyone deserved a chance. No matter who they were. No matter what they'd done. No matter what anybody else thought. She said that's what made us different from animals. The ability to choose kindness, even when it's hard." "Did you believe her?" "Not at first. I'd seen too much ugliness in the war. Too much cruelty. I thought she was naive." Silas looked up at the stars. "But she kept proving me wrong. Over and over. She chose kindness with me when I didn't deserve it. She chose kindness with strangers who couldn't repay her. She chose kindness every single day until the day she died. And now I try to do the same, not because I'm good at it, because she showed me it matters." Silas turned to look at Ruth. "You deserve kindness, Ruth. You deserve a home and a family and people who love you. And I'm going to make sure you get all of that. Not because you earned it, because every child deserves it, including you." Ruth's eyes filled with tears. This time she didn't blink them away. "What if Mr. Cobb takes me back?" "He won't." "But what if—" "Ruth." Silas's voice was firm but gentle. "I've fought wars. I've buried my wife. I've raised 2 children alone. I've survived things that would break most men. And I'm telling you now, I'm not gonna let anyone take you. Not Cobb, not the law, not anyone. You're safe here. You're wanted here. And that's not gonna change." Ruth stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised them both. She moved across the space between them and wrapped her thin arms around his neck. Silas froze. Then slowly, carefully, he hugged her back. She was so small, so fragile, so broken, and so brave all at once. "Thank you," she whispered against his shoulder. "Thank you." "You're welcome, Ruth. I'll try to be good. I'll work hard. I won't be trouble." "You don't have to be anything except yourself." Silas's voice was rough. "That's all I want, just you." They sat there for a while longer, the man and the girl, while the stars turned overhead and the crickets sang and the summer wind blew warm across the valley. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Cobb would come back. The law would have to be dealt with. The town would talk. There would be battles to fight and prices to pay. But tonight, there was just this, a broken family slowly becoming whole. And that was enough. That was more than enough. The first week passed like a held breath. Ruth woke before dawn every morning, slipping out of bed so quietly. Emmy never stirred. Silas would find her in the kitchen scrubbing floors, or washing dishes, or doing whatever work she could find, like she was trying to earn her place through labor alone. "You don't have to do that," he told her on the third morning. "I want to help." Helping is one thing. Working yourself to exhaustion is another. Silas took the rag from her hands. "When's the last time you just played like a kid?" Ruth stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. "I don't understand." "Playing, running around, having fun. Kids do it." "I'm not—" She stopped, looked away. "I don't know how." That afternoon, Silas sent all 3 children out to the creek with strict instructions to catch frogs and come back muddy. Emmy took charge immediately, showing Ruth the best spots to look, explaining the proper technique for frog catching with the seriousness of a general planning a campaign. Toby hung back at first, watching Ruth with suspicious eyes. But when she found a particularly fat bullfrog and let out a shriek of surprise, he laughed so hard he fell over. "You should have seen your face." "It jumped at me." They do that. That's the fun part. By the time they came back to the house, all 3 of them were soaked and filthy and grinning. Ruth's smile was small, uncertain, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to be happy. But it was there. Silas watched from the porch and felt something loosen in his chest. Maybe this could work. Maybe they could actually be a family. Then Sunday came, and everything fell apart. The church in Willow Creek was a small white building with a crooked steeple and pews that creaked when you breathed wrong. Silas hadn't been since Martha's funeral, but Emmy had been asking, and he figured it was time. He should have known better. They walked in together, all 4 of them, Ruth in a dress Emmy had outgrown, and shoes that were slightly too big. The congregation turned to look, and kept looking. Pastor Williams stopped mid-sentence. Mrs. Henderson's mouth fell open. Old Tom Garrett actually stood up from his pew like he was about to say something. "Silas Thornton," Pastor Williams' voice carried across the silent church. "I see you've brought a guest." "My daughter," Silas said clearly. "Ruth." The silence got louder somehow. "Perhaps," Mrs. Henderson said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "the child would be more comfortable waiting outside. The service can be long for little ones. She'll be fine. I really think I said she'll be fine." Silas guided his children to an empty pew near the back. Ruth's hand gripped his so tight her knuckles went white. "They're staring at me," she whispered. "Let them stare. They don't want me here. This is God's house. Everyone's welcome in God's house." "That's not true." Silas looked down at her, at this child who'd learned through pain and rejection exactly how the world really worked. "It should be true," he said quietly. And in my house, it is. The service was a disaster. Pastor Williams stumbled through his sermon, kept losing his place, kept glancing at Ruth like she was a stain on his perfect congregation. When it finally ended, people filed out without looking at them. All except one. "Mr. Thornton?" Silas turned. A woman stood behind them, maybe 50, with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen things. "I'm Margaret Whitmore. My husband was Samuel Whitmore. He died in the war." "I remember him. Good man." He was. Margaret's gaze moved to Ruth. "And you, child. What's your name?" Ruth looked at Silas, uncertain. He nodded. "Ruth, ma'am." "Ruth." Margaret smiled, and it transformed her stern face into something almost beautiful. "That's a good name. Strong name. I've always loved the book of Ruth." You have... "Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee," Margaret quoted softly. "For whither thou goest, I will go." Ruth's eyes went wide. "You know it." "I know it well." Margaret looked at Silas. "You're doing a good thing, Mr. Thornton. Not everyone will see it that way, but some of us do." "Thank you, Mrs. Whitmore." "Margaret, and if you need anything, witnesses' testimony, someone to speak to that fool judge when the time comes, you come find me." Her voice hardened. "I've seen what Cobb does to those children. My husband would have burned that place to the ground if he'd lived long enough." She walked away before Silas could respond. "Daddy." Emmy tugged his sleeve. "Who was that?" "An ally," Silas said slowly. "We're gonna need more of those." The next morning, Silas rode into town alone. He had business at the feed store, but that wasn't the real reason he'd come. He found Sheriff John Dawson at his usual spot, feet up on his desk hat, over his eyes, pretending to sleep. Dawson had been sheriff of Willow Creek for 12 years, and in all that time, Silas had never seen him do anything more strenuous than arrest a drunk cowboy or break up a bar fight. "Dawson." The sheriff tipped his hat up. "Thornton. Heard you've been making friends." "Heard you've been talking to Cobb." "Man filed a complaint. Had to take it." "And..." Dawson swung his feet down, leaned forward. "And I'm in a difficult position. Cobb's got papers, legal ones, signed by a magistrate in Helena. Those papers are fraudulent." "Maybe, probably, but proving it..." Dawson spread his hands. "That's above my pay grade. So what are you saying?" "I'm saying Cobb's pushing for me to come out to your place and collect the girl. I'm saying I don't want to do that, but I might not have a choice." Silas felt that cold, dangerous thing rising in his chest again. "You try to take her, John, and we're going to have a problem." "I know." Dawson's voice was tired. "That's why I'm giving you a heads up. You've got maybe a week before the pressure gets too strong. Use it. Find a lawyer. Get your own papers in order. Build a case. And if that's not enough, then I'll have to do my job." Dawson met his eyes. "I don't want to, Silas. I've got no love for Cobb. But the law is the law. The law is wrong. Sometimes, but it's all we've got." Silas left without another word. His hands were shaking. 1 week. He had 1 week to figure out how to save Ruth legally, or he'd have to do it some other way. The ride home felt longer than usual. His mind raced through options, possibilities, dead ends. A lawyer would cost money he didn't have. Building a case took time he might not have. And running number. He'd promised Ruth she was safe, that this was her home. He couldn't break that promise. He was so lost in thought he almost missed the rider waiting at the edge of his property. Silas pulled up shorthand, moving to his rifle. "Easy, Thornton." The rider held up both hands. "I'm not here for trouble." It was one of Cobb's men, the wiry one with the scar down his cheek. Up close he looked younger than Silas had thought, barely more than a boy himself. You've got 10 seconds to explain why you're on my land. My name's Daniel. Daniel Reeves. The young man swallowed hard. I work for Cobb, but I don't want to anymore. Then quit. It's not that simple. He's got... Daniel stopped. Started again. He's got things on me. Things he'll use if I leave. Not my problem. No. But maybe I can be yours. Daniel's eyes were desperate. I know things, Mr. Thornton, about the camp, about what Cobb does to those kids, about where the bodies are buried. Silas went very still. Bodies. Kids who died. Kids who tried to run and didn't make it. He buries them in the north field behind the tree line. There's at least a dozen. Jesus Christ. I can testify. I can tell a judge everything I've seen, but I need protection. If Cobb finds out I'm talking to you, why should I trust you? Daniel flinched. You shouldn't. I've done terrible things. I've watched kids suffer and done nothing. I'm not a good man, Mr. Thornton, but I'm trying to be better, and right now helping you is the only way I know how. Silas studied him, saw the fear, the guilt, the desperate hope of someone looking for redemption. You ride to my house. You stay there until I figure out what to do with you. And if this is some kind of trick, it's not, I swear. We'll see. They rode back together. Daniel told him everything along the way, the conditions at the camp, the punishments, the children who'd disappeared. By the time they reached the house, Silas felt sick with rage. Ruth was on the porch when they arrived. She saw Daniel and went white. No! She backed toward the door. No, Ruth! He's one of them. He hurt us. Ruth! Silas swung down from his horse and moved toward her slowly. I know who he is. But he's here to help. He can't help. He's a monster. Daniel flinched like he'd been struck. She's right. Shut up. Silas knelt in front of Ruth, took her shoulders gently. Listen to me. This man knows things about Cobb. Things that could put him in prison. Things that could save you and all the other kids still at that camp. I don't care. I know you're scared. I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But sometimes... Silas's voice cracked. Sometimes the only way to win is to accept help from people who've hurt you. That's not fair. No, it's not. None of this is fair. Silas pulled her close. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Ruth was shaking. Her whole body trembled against him. I don't know, she whispered. That's okay. You don't have to know. You just have to try. A long moment passed. Then Ruth nodded against his chest. Okay, I'll try. The next few days were tense. Daniel slept in the barn, keeping his distance from the children. Ruth refused to be in the same room as him, which meant Emmy appointed herself as go-between, carrying messages and relaying information with the efficiency of a tiny general. Mr. Daniel says he remembers where Cobb keeps his records, she reported at dinner one evening. He says there's a lockbox in the main house with all the papers. Real papers. The ones that show where the children came from. That could prove the guardianship is false, Silas said slowly. That's what Mr. Daniel says. Emmy paused. Also, he says he's sorry. He wants Ruth to know he's really, really sorry. Ruth's fork clattered against her plate. I don't care what he's sorry about. Emmy, that's enough, Silas said gently. Ruth doesn't have to forgive anyone if she's not ready. But enough. Later, after the children were in bed, Silas sat on the porch with Daniel. The younger man had barely eaten in days. His hands shook when he held his coffee cup. She's right to hate me, Daniel said quietly. I was there when Cobb beat her. I held her down while he... His voice broke. I was a coward. I told myself I was just surviving. But survival doesn't excuse cruelty. No, it doesn't. I'm going to hell for what I've done. Maybe. Silas took a sip of his coffee. But you're still breathing. Still got time to do better. Is that what you believe? It's what my wife believed. She thought everyone deserved a second chance, no matter what they'd done. And you? Silas was quiet for a long moment. I believe people can change. But change means nothing without action. You want redemption. Daniel, help me take down Cobb. Help me save those kids. Then maybe you'll deserve forgiveness. And if Ruth never forgives me, then you learn to live with that. Some things can't be fixed. Some wounds don't heal. But you keep trying anyway, because it's the right thing to do. Daniel stared into his coffee. You're a good man, Mr. Thornton. I'm a man who's made his own mistakes. I just got lucky enough to get another chance. Silas stood. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we plan. The plan came together piece by piece. Margaret Whitmore put them in touch with a lawyer in Boulder, a man named Thomas Gray, who'd made his name fighting corrupt land deals. Gray agreed to take the case for half his usual fee, the other half to be paid if they won. This isn't going to be easy, Gray warned them during their first meeting. Cobb has connections, money, friends in the territorial government. But if what your witness says is true, if we can prove systematic abuse and false documentation, we have a chance. What do you need from us? Testimony, documentation, and time. Gray spread his hands. The territorial court doesn't convene until September. That's 2 months away. We might not have 2 months. Then we need to make sure you do. File for protective custody. Get the sheriff on record stating he's aware of the abuse allegations. Build a wall of paperwork so high that Cobb can't climb it without exposing himself. They worked day and night. Daniel provided names, dates, details. Ruth, with enormous courage, began writing down her own memories, the beatings, the starvation, the children who'd died. Emmy helped her with spelling. Toby sat beside her and held her hand when the memories got too heavy. And through it all, Silas watched for Cobb. He came on a Tuesday just before sunset. Silas was mending a fence when he heard the horses. He straightened, hand moving to the pistol at his hip, and watched 4 riders come over the ridge. Cobb in front, 3 men behind him, and this time there was a 5th rider. Sheriff Dawson. Silas felt his blood turn cold. Get in the house, he told Emmy, who'd been helping him with the fence. Get your brother and Ruth. Lock the door. Don't come out until I say. Daddy. Now Emmeline. She ran. Silas walked toward the approaching riders, keeping his hand near his gun, his face carefully blank. Cobb pulled up 20 feet away. His smile was wide and cruel. Mr. Thornton, I believe you have something that belongs to me. We've been through this. We have, but now I've got the law with me. Cobb nodded toward Dawson. Sheriff, do your duty. Dawson dismounted slowly. His face was drawn, troubled. He wouldn't meet Silas's eyes. Silas, I've got a court order, signed by Judge Harrison in Helena. It demands the immediate return of the child Ruth to her legal guardian, Jedediah Cobb. That order is based on fraudulent documents. That may be, but until a court says otherwise, then get me a court. It's not that simple. Make it that simple. Silas stepped forward. Dawson stepped back. I've got evidence, John. Testimony from one of Cobb's own men. Documentation of abuse. Names of children who died at that camp. You take Ruth now, and you're signing her death warrant. Cobb's smile flickered. What testimony? What documentation? Wouldn't you like to know? If you've got evidence, present it to the court. I will, in September. Until then, Ruth stays with me. The court order says, I don't care what the court order says. Silas's voice dropped low. Dangerous. I care about a little girl who's been beaten and starved and worked half to death. I care about justice. And if you think I'm going to hand her over to the man who did all that, you're out of your mind. Dawson ran a hand over his face. Silas, you're putting me in an impossible position. No, Cobb put you there. I'm just refusing to play along. I could arrest you for obstruction. You could try. The silence stretched tight. Cobb's men shifted in their saddles. Dawson's hand moved toward his gun, then away. 2 weeks, Dawson said finally. I'll tell the judge there were complications. Weather. Illness. Something. But in 2 weeks I have to enforce this order. That's not enough time. It's all I can give you. Dawson mounted his horse. Use it well. Cobb's face had gone red with rage. You can't do this, Sheriff. The law gives me discretion, Mr. Cobb, and right now, I'm exercising it. Dawson turned to Silas. 2 weeks, Thornton. Don't make me regret this. He rode away. Cobb stayed, his eyes burning with hatred. You think you've won something, Cobb said quietly. You haven't. You've just delayed the inevitable. Maybe. Or maybe I've bought enough time to destroy you. With what? The testimony of a traitor and a lying little... Finish that sentence. Silas's hand closed around his pistol. I dare you. Cobb's jaw tightened. He yanked his reins, turning his horse. 2 weeks, he called over his shoulder. Enjoy them. They'll be your last. He rode away, his men following. Silas stood watching until they disappeared over the ridge. Then his legs gave out, and he sat down hard in the dirt. Daddy! Emmy came running from the house, Ruth and Toby behind her. They surrounded him, grabbing his arms, his hands, his shirt. Are you okay? What happened? Are they coming back? I'm okay. Silas pulled them close. I'm okay. They're gone. For now. For now. Ruth's voice shook. What does that mean? It means we have 2 weeks. 2 weeks to build our case. 2 weeks to make sure Cobb never hurts anyone again. And if we can't... Silas looked at her. At this child who'd survived so much, who'd learned not to hope because hope just made the disappointment worse. Then we run, he said quietly. I'll sell the ranch. We'll go somewhere Cobb can't find us. Start over. You do that. Give up everything. Ruth. Silas took her face in his hands. You are everything. You and Emmy and Toby. This ranch, this land, it's just dirt and wood. It doesn't matter without the people I love. Ruth's eyes filled with tears. You love me. I love you. But you've only known me for... Love doesn't work on a schedule. It just happens. Silas pulled her close. You're my daughter, Ruth. Maybe not by blood, but in every way that matters. And I will fight for you until my last breath. She broke then. Broke in a way she hadn't let herself break before, sobbing against his chest, years of pain and fear pouring out in waves. Emmy wrapped her arms around both of them. Toby pressed against their legs, crying without knowing why. And Silas held them all, his family, his heart, everything he had in this world. 2 weeks. 14 days to save Ruth. To take down Cobb. To prove that justice still meant something in this God-forsaken territory. It wasn't enough time. It was never going to be enough time. But it was what they had. And Silas Thornton had never been a man who gave up easy. That night, after the children were finally asleep, he sat at the kitchen table with a lantern and a piece of paper. He wrote until his hand cramped, then switched hands and kept writing. Letters to the territorial governor, to the newspaper in Boulder, to every contact he had from his days in the army. He wrote until the lantern burned dry, and the sky started to lighten outside the window. When Emmy came down for breakfast, she found him still at the table, surrounded by pages. Daddy, did you sleep? Sleep is for people who aren't fighting wars. Emmy climbed into his lap, something she hadn't done in months. Are we going to win? Silas thought about Cobb, about the power he wielded, about the children still suffering at his camp, about Ruth upstairs, finally sleeping peacefully for the first time since he'd found her. Yes, sweetheart, he said quietly. We're going to win. How do you know? Because we have to. Because giving up isn't an option. Because your mama didn't raise a quitter, and neither did I. Emmy smiled. It was her mother's smile, bright and fierce and full of faith. "Okay, Daddy. I believe you." Silas held her close and prayed that her faith wouldn't be misplaced. Outside, the sun rose over the mountains. A new day beginning. 12 days left. The clock was ticking. The letters went out on the 8th day. Silas rode to Boulder himself, hand-delivered them to the newspaper editor, the territorial marshal's office, and Thomas Gray's law firm. By the time he got back, the sun had set, and his horse was lathered with sweat. Daniel met him at the barn door, his face pale. "Something's wrong." Silas swung down from the saddle. "What happened?" "Riders came while you were gone. 4 of them. They didn't come to the house, just sat on the ridge watching. Stayed there for 3 hours, then left. Cobb's men. I recognized 2 of them." Silas's blood went cold. "Where are the children?" "Inside. I kept them there all day. Emmy wanted to go out to the creek, but I wouldn't let her." "Good." Silas handed him the reins. "Take care of the horse. I need to see them." He found all 3 children in the kitchen, huddled around the table. Emmy had her arm around Ruth, who was trembling. Toby sat across from them, his small face set in a determined expression that looked heartbreakingly like Silas's own. "Daddy." Emmy jumped up and ran to him. "Mr. Daniel said bad men came." "They did, but they're gone now." "Are they coming back?" "I don't know, sweetheart." Ruth hadn't moved. She sat staring at the table, her hands clenched in her lap. "Ruth, they're watching us." Her voice was flat, dead. "They're always watching, waiting. Let them wait. You don't understand." Ruth finally looked up and her eyes were hollow. "Mr. Cobb doesn't lose, ever. The people who fight him, they disappear. They have accidents. Their barns burn down. Their cattle die." Her voice cracked. "He told me once. He said, 'Ruth, no one who crosses me lives to regret it.' And he meant it. Ruth, maybe I should go back." "No. If I go back, he'll leave you alone. You and Emmy and Toby, you'll be safe." "Ruth, listen to me." Silas crossed to her, knelt beside her chair. "I didn't bring you here just to give you up the moment things got hard. I made you a promise. I don't break my promises. But if something happens to Emmy, to Toby, nothing is going to happen to them. You can't know that. I know that I'd die before I let anyone hurt my children." Silas took her hands. "All my children, including you." Ruth's composure shattered. She fell forward against him, sobbing, her thin body shaking with fear and grief and something else. Something that might have been hope, struggling to survive against everything she'd learned about the world. Silas held her and let her cry. Over her shoulder he saw Emmy watching them. His daughter's face was set with determination. "Daddy," she said quietly, "what are we going to do?" "We're going to fight." "How?" Silas didn't have an answer. Not yet, but he'd find one. He had to. The 9th day brought trouble of a different kind. Silas was checking the livestock when he heard Emmy screaming from inside the house. He ran, covered the distance from the barn to the porch, in seconds burst through the door with his heart hammering, and found Emmy standing over Ruth, who lay on the kitchen floor convulsing. "Daddy, she just fell. She was fine. And then she fell, and she won't stop shaking." Silas dropped to his knees beside Ruth. Her eyes had rolled back her body, jerking in spasms he couldn't control. "Toby, get water. Emmy, get blankets. Now." They scattered. Silas turned Ruth on her side, remembering what the army doctors had taught him about fits and seizures. Keep the airway clear. Don't restrain. Wait it out. The longest 2 minutes of his life. Finally, the convulsions stopped. Ruth went limp, breathing shallow but steady. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused. "What happened?" "You had a fit. Probably from the fever. The infection's not fully healed." "I'm sorry." "Don't apologize. Just rest." He carried her to bed, and this time she didn't protest. She was too weak, too tired, too broken. Daniel appeared in the doorway, his face ashen. "Is she?" "She needs a doctor. But I can't leave, and I can't bring one here without Cobb finding out." "I'll go." Silas looked at him sharply. "You'll be recognized." "I know a doctor in Cedar Falls, 20 miles east. He's not connected to Cobb. If I ride hard, I can be back by nightfall." "Why would you do that?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "Because I held her down while Cobb beat her. Because I watched children die and did nothing. Because maybe if I can help save her, I can live with myself." Silas studied him for a long moment. "Go. But if you're not back by midnight, I'm coming looking. And if you've betrayed us—" "I haven't. I won't." He was gone within the hour. Silas sat by Ruth's bedside, watching her sleep, counting her breaths, praying to a God he wasn't sure he believed in anymore. Emmy crept in after dark. "Is she going to die?" "No, sweetheart. She's just sick. She'll get better." "Promise." Silas looked at his daughter, at the fear in her eyes, at the way she clutched the doorframe like it was the only thing holding her up. He couldn't lie to her. "I hope so, Emmy. I'm doing everything I can." "That's not a promise." "No, it's not." Silas held out his hand. "Come here." She crossed the room and climbed into his lap, something she hadn't done regularly since Martha died. He held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair soap and sunshine and childhood. "When Mama was sick," Emmy said quietly, "you promised she'd get better, and she didn't." The words hit him like a physical blow. "I know. I was so mad at you, for lying. I know that too. I'm not mad anymore." Emmy pulled back to look at his face. "I understand now. You weren't lying. You were hoping. And sometimes hope is all we have." Silas felt tears burn his eyes. "When did you get so wise?" "Mama taught me." "Yeah." His voice cracked. "She taught me too." Daniel returned at 10:30, a small, wiry man riding beside him. Dr. Samuel Hartley, who asked no questions, examined Ruth with gentle hands and left a bag of medicines with careful instructions. "The infection spread deeper than I'd like," Hartley told Silas privately. "The seizure was her body fighting it. Keep her cool, keep her hydrated, give her the medicine every 4 hours. If she makes it through the next 2 days, she'll live. If— I won't lie to you, Mr. Thornton. This child has been through hell. Her body is exhausted. Sometimes the will to live matters more than medicine. She's got plenty of will. Then she's got a chance." The 10th day. Ruth's fever broke in the early morning hours. Silas had dozed off in the chair beside her bed. He woke to find her watching him, her eyes clear for the first time in days. "You stayed." "Course I stayed." "All night. All night." Ruth's lower lip trembled. "Mr. Cobb used to lock us up when we got sick. Said we weren't worth the cost of medicine." "Cobb's a monster. We've established that." "I thought when I fell, I thought you'd finally see I was too much trouble, that you'd send me away." "Ruth." Silas leaned forward. "I'm not sending you anywhere. Not now. Not ever. How many times do I have to say it?" "I don't know. A lot, maybe." "Then I'll keep saying it. Every day. Until you believe me." She reached for his hand. Her fingers were still too thin, still trembling slightly, but they were warm now, alive. "I think I'm starting to." The 11th day. Thomas Gray arrived with news. "The territorial marshal is interested," he said, spreading papers across the kitchen table. "Daniel's testimony, combined with Ruth's written account and the medical evidence, it's enough to launch an investigation." "How long until they act?" "That's the problem. The marshal wants to wait for the September session, build an airtight case. He's afraid if they move too fast, Cobb's connections will bury it." I don't have until September. Dawson's deadline is in 3 days. Gray's face was grim. I know. I've filed for an emergency injunction. Asked the court to suspend Cobb's custody claim pending investigation. But these things take time. Time we don't have. I'm doing everything I can, Silas. I know you are. Silas rubbed his face. What happens if the injunction doesn't come through? Then Dawson enforces the order. Ruth goes back to Cobb. Over my dead body. Silas. I mean it, Thomas. I'm not handing that girl over. Not to him. Not to anyone. Gray was quiet for a moment. If you resist, they'll arrest you. Emmy and Toby will be alone. Is that what you want? The question hung in the air, heavy and impossible. Silas thought about Martha. About the promises he'd made at her grave. About the children sleeping upstairs, trusting him to keep them safe. I want, he said slowly, to do what's right. Even if it costs me everything. Even if it means losing Emmy and Toby. If I give Ruth up, I'm teaching my children that some people don't deserve protection. That the law matters more than justice. That you can abandon someone just because it's convenient. Silas shook his head. I can't do that. Ooh, I won't. Then we better hope that injunction comes through. The 12th day. Nothing. Silas spent it fortifying the house, boarding up windows, checking ammunition, preparing for a siege that might never come or might come tomorrow. Daniel worked beside him in silence. The man who'd once held children down for beatings now hammered nails like his life depended on it. Maybe it did. You know they'll kill me if this goes bad, Daniel said quietly. Cobb doesn't tolerate traitors. You're not a traitor. You're a witness. Same thing to him. Yeah, I suppose it is. Silas drove another nail home. You scared? Terrified. Good. Scared means you're thinking. Thinking keeps you alive. Is that what they taught you in the war? That's what the war taught me, period. Silas straightened, wiped sweat from his brow. You ever killed a man, Daniel? No. I have, lots of them. Some deserved it, some didn't. Silas looked at him directly. If Cobb comes for Ruth, I'll kill him. I need you to understand that. I understand. And I need to know if it comes to that, whose side you're on. Daniel held his gaze. I'm on hers. On Ruth's, whatever that takes. Then we're good. The 13th day, the day before the deadline, Sheriff Dawson rode in at noon alone. Silas met him at the edge of the property, rifle in hand. You here to arrest me? Not yet. Dawson dismounted, his face haggard. I came to warn you. Cobb's gathering men. Dozen at least. He's not waiting for the legal deadline. When? Tonight. Maybe tomorrow morning. He's tired of playing by the rules. So am I. Silas. Dawson stepped closer. I've known you 12 years. You're a good man, a fair man. Don't throw that away over this. Over what, a child's life? Over a fight you can't win. I've won plenty of fights people said I couldn't win. This is different. Cobb's got moneymen connections. And I've got something he doesn't. What's that? Silas looked toward the house where 3 children waited for him to keep them safe. Something worth dying for. Dawson was silent for a long moment. Then he said, the injunction came through. Silas's heart stopped. What? Thomas Gray's emergency filing. The court approved it this morning. Cobb's custody claim is suspended pending investigation. Legally, he's got no right to Ruth. Then why? Because Cobb doesn't care about legal. Dawson's voice was tired. He's coming anyway, Silas. Papers or no papers. He's going to take that girl, and he's going to make an example of anyone who gets in his way. Let him try. I'm trying to help you here. Then help me. Stand with me. Tell Cobb he can't have her. I'm one man. So am I, but I'm not backing down. Dawson stared at him. You're going to get yourself killed. Maybe, but I'll take some of them with me. And what about your children, Emmy Toby? What happens to them if you die in a shootout with Cobb's men? The question cut deep. Silas felt it in his gut, sharp and cold. If I don't fight, they learn that bullies always win, that good men stay silent, that fear is stronger than love. Silas's voice hardened. I'd rather die standing than live kneeling, and I'd rather my children have a dead father they're proud of than a living one they're ashamed of. Dawson looked at him for a long time. All right, he said finally. All right, I'll do what I can. What does that mean? It means I'll delay them, stall, buy you as much time as possible. Dawson mounted his horse. But Silas, when Cobb comes, and he will come, you better be ready. I will be. He watched the sheriff ride away, then went inside to tell the children. Ruth took the news with surprising calm. I knew he'd come. The injunction means he's breaking the law if he does. He doesn't care about law. He cares about control. Ruth's voice was steady now, stronger than it had been. He can't let me go. Can't let anyone see that a little girl beat him. It would destroy everything he's built. Then we destroy him first. How? Silas looked at her, this child who'd survived things that would break most adults, and felt a surge of fierce pride. Together, he said. The way we do everything now. They prepared through the night. Daniel dug rifle pits around the property. Margaret Whitmore arrived with her 2 grown sons and enough ammunition to start a war. You didn't think I'd let you fight alone, she said when Silas started to protest. Samuel would never forgive me. Other neighbors came too. The Pattersons with their hunting rifles. Old Tom Garrett, who'd lost 2 sons to Cobb's work camps and never had the courage to fight back. Even Pastor Williams, shamefaced and stuttering with a shotgun he clearly didn't know how to use. By dawn, a dozen people stood with Silas. Not an army, but something better. A community. Why are they here? Ruth asked, staring at the gathering from the window. Because they're tired of being afraid, Emmy said from beside her. That's what Daddy says. Fear is a prison, and sometimes you have to break out. But they hardly know me. They know what's right. Emmy took her hand. And they know your family, our family, and nobody messes with family. Ruth's eyes filled with tears. I've never had this before. Had what? People who care, who show up. Her voice broke. I thought I was alone. I've always been alone. Not anymore. Emmy squeezed her hand. Never again. Cobb came at high noon. Silas heard the horses first, counted the hoofbeats. 15 riders at least, maybe more. Everyone in position, he called. Nobody fires until I give the word. He walked out to meet them alone. Cobb rode at the head of the column, his face twisted with rage. Behind him, his men spread out in a ragged line, rifles and pistols at the ready. Thornton, Cobb's voice carried across the distance. I'm done playing games. Hand over the girl. The court says I don't have to. I don't give a damn what the court says. Then you're breaking the law. The law is whatever I say it is. Cobb spurred his horse forward, stopping just 20 feet from where Silas stood. Last chance. Give me Ruth and I'll let you live. You and your brats. I'll even let you keep your precious ranch. And if I don't, then I burn it all. The house, the barn, everything. And I drag that girl back to where she belongs over your dead body. Silas felt the weight of the pistol at his hip, felt the eyes of his neighbors watching from their positions, felt somewhere behind him 3 children counting on him to save them. You know what I learned in the war, Cobb? I don't care what. I learned that men like you always lose, not because you're weaker, but because you're alone. You surround yourself with people who fear you, and you think that's power. But fear isn't loyalty. Fear runs the moment things get hard. Is that so? Look around. Silas gestured at the farmhouse behind him. Those people, they're not afraid of you. They're here because they believe in something bigger than themselves. You can't buy that. Can't beat it into people. Can't fake it. Fine words. Let's see if they stop bullets. Cobb raised his hand. His men lifted their weapons. Silas didn't move. You shoot me, he said quietly. And you better kill me with the first round. Because if you don't, I promise you I'll take you with me. And all those friends in the territorial government, they won't save you from a grave. Something flickered in Cobb's eyes. Doubt, fear. You're bluffing. Try me. The moment stretched, tight, endless. Then, Mr. Cobb. One of his men was pointing at the ridge behind them. Silas looked. Riders, 20 at least. 20 at. Coming fast. Sheriff Dawson, someone muttered. He's got the marshal with him. Cobb's face went white. The new arrivals thundered into the standoff, spreading out between Cobb's men and the farmhouse. Sheriff Dawson rode straight up to Cobb, a badge glinting on his chest that Silas had never seen before. Deputy U.S. Marshal Dawson, he announced. Jedediah Cobb, you're under arrest. On what charges? Murder, child abuse, false imprisonment, fraud. Dawson's voice was iron. We've got testimony from 3 witnesses, documentation of 12 suspicious deaths, and a territorial warrant signed by Judge Harrison himself. That's impossible. Harrison's been removed from the bench pending his own investigation. A new voice. Thomas Gray rode forward, papers in hand. Turns out he's been taking bribes for years. Your bribes, Mr. Cobb. We've got records. You can't do this. We're doing it. Dawson nodded to his men. Take him. Cobb's hand moved toward his gun. Silas drew first. The shot rang out across the valley. Cobb's pistol flew from his hand and he clutched his wrist with a scream. Next one's between your eyes, Silas said calmly. Your choice. Cobb's men looked at each other, at the marshals surrounding them, at their wounded leader. One by one they dropped their weapons. It was over. Ruth stood on the porch, Emmy on one side, Toby on the other. She watched them drag Cobb away in chains, his face contorted with rage, his curses echoing across the valley. Is it really over? She whispered. Silas climbed the steps and gathered all 3 children into his arms. It's really over. He can't hurt me anymore. Never again, I promise. Ruth broke down then, not in fear this time, but in relief, in joy, in something she'd never allowed herself to feel before. Hope, real hope. Silas held her while she cried, while Emmy and Toby pressed close, while the neighbors gathered around them, offering congratulations and support, and the simple gift of presence. Margaret Whitmore caught his eye and nodded. Old Tom Garrett wiped tears from his weathered cheeks. Even Pastor Williams managed a genuine smile. You did it? Emmy said wonderingly. You actually did it. We did it. Silas looked at his family. His whole family. Together. Daniel Reeves hung back at the edge of the crowd, uncertain. Ruth noticed him first. Mr. Daniel? He flinched. I'll go. I just wanted to make sure. Wait. Ruth pulled away from Silas and walked toward him, her steps hesitant but determined. You helped us. You testified against Mr. Cobb, even though you knew he'd kill you for it. I did terrible things. I don't deserve. I know what you did. I remember all of it. Ruth's voice was steady. But I also remember that you cried sometimes. At night, when you thought no one could hear. You cried for us. Daniel's face crumpled. I don't forgive you, Ruth continued. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But... She took a breath. But I don't hate you anymore, and that's a start. It wasn't absolution. It wasn't redemption. But it was grace. And sometimes grace was all anyone could offer. Sheriff Dawson. Deputy Marshal Dawson now approached Silas as the sun began to set. Hell of a day. Hell of a day, Silas agreed. How'd you manage all this? Thomas Gray. Man's got connections I never knew about. Called in favors from 3 territories, got the federal marshal involved, built a case faster than I've ever seen. And the Harrison thing. Genuine luck. Another judge was already investigating him for unrelated corruption. Our complaint just accelerated things. So it's done. Cobb's finished. The man, yes. His operation, that'll take longer. There's still a dozen kids at that camp. They'll need homes, families, people who care. We can help with that. Dawson raised an eyebrow. You want to take in more? Silas looked at his children, at Ruth standing between Emmy and Toby, finally looking like she belonged. Not all of them, but maybe one or two more. When Ruth's ready. When we all are. You're a good man, Silas Thornton. I'm a man who got lucky, found the right woman, raised the right kids, got a second chance to do something that matters. Most men don't take second chances. Most men are afraid. Silas shook his head. I was afraid too. For a long time after Martha died. Afraid of losing again. Afraid of loving again. But Ruth... He paused. Ruth taught me that fear is the real prison. And the only way out is through. Dawson nodded slowly. For what it's worth, Martha would be proud. I hope so. I know so. The marshal rode away, taking Cobb and his men with him. The neighbors dispersed one by one, heading home with promises to return to help rebuild, to stand together again if need ever arose. Finally, it was just the five of them. Silas, Emmy, Toby, Ruth, and Daniel. What happens now? Ruth asked. Now, Silas said. We live. We heal. We become a family for real. What about Mr. Daniel? Silas looked at the young man still hovering at the edge of the property, like he wasn't sure he was allowed to stay. Daniel's got his own path to walk, his own redemption to find, but he's welcome here long as he needs a place to figure things out. Daniel's eyes widened. You'd do that after everything. You helped save my daughter. That earns you something. Silas held out his hand. Start over, right here, right now. Daniel stared at the offered hand for a long moment. Then he took it. They walked back to the house together as the sun dipped below the mountains. Emmy immediately started planning dinner, rattling off ingredients and recipes with the authority of a tiny general. Toby attached himself to Ruth's side, holding her hand like he'd never let go. And Silas Thornton, widower and father, stood on his porch and watched the sky turn gold and pink and purple. Thank you, Martha, he whispered to the evening air, for teaching me how to love, for giving me Emmy and Toby, for sending me Ruth when I needed her most. The wind stirred the grass, that was all. But somewhere, somehow, Silas knew she was watching, and she was proud. The weeks that followed Cobb's arrest moved in a blur of paperwork and hearings and sleepless nights. Thomas Gray filed motion after motion, building a case so airtight that even Cobb's remaining allies couldn't find a crack to exploit. Ruth spent most of that time preparing, writing, remembering. I don't want to do this, she told Silas one evening, her hand cramping around the pencil. I don't want to remember anymore. I know. Every time I write something down, it's like living it again. The cold, the hunger, the way Mr. Cobb smiled before he... She stopped, swallowed hard. You don't have to do this alone. Yes, I do. Ruth looked up at him, and her eyes were older than any child's should be. If I can't face my own memories, how am I going to face him in court? Silas didn't have an answer for that. The trial was set for the first week of September. Judge William Crawford, no relation to the disgraced Harrison, presided. He was known throughout the territory as a fair man, a hard man, a man who couldn't be bought. They rode to Boulder together, all five of them. Silas had sold 2 horses to pay for the hotel rooms. Emmy had insisted on bringing her Bible. Toby clutched a wooden horse he'd carved for Ruth, a gift to give her courage. Daniel came too, though he kept his distance, staying in a separate boarding house on the other side of town. His testimony would be crucial, but his presence still made Ruth flinch. Some wounds needed more time. The morning of the first hearing, Ruth refused to eat breakfast. I can't. You have to. I'll throw up. Emmy pushed a piece of toast across the table. Just one bite. Mama always said you can't fight battles on an empty stomach. Ruth stared at the toast like it might attack her. Then slowly she took it and nibbled the corner. There. That wasn't so hard. It was very hard. But you did it anyway. Emmy squeezed her hand. That's what brave looks like. The courthouse was packed. Silas had expected that Cobb's trial had drawn attention from across the territory, but he hadn't expected the hostility. There's the girl, someone muttered as they walked in. Cobb's little troublemaker. Shame what she's doing to that man. He gave her everything. Some people just can't be grateful. Silas's hand tightened on Ruth's shoulder. Ignore them. I'm trying. They don't know what they're talking about. I know, but it still hurts. Thomas Gray met them at the door to the courtroom, his face grave. We've got a problem. What kind of problem? Cobb's lawyer, Morrison. He's brought in 3 witnesses who claim Ruth is a liar. Former workers from the camp who will testify that conditions were good, that Cobb treated the children fairly. That's ridiculous. I know, but the jury doesn't. Not yet. Gray lowered his voice. Ruth's going to have to be convincing. Really convincing. If she falls apart on the stand, she won't. Gray looked at Ruth, who stood pale and trembling between Emmy and Toby. I hope you're right. The first day was procedural. Opening statements, legal motions, the kind of dry courtroom drama that put spectators to sleep. But Silas watched the jury. 12 men, most of them ranchers and shopkeepers from towns within 100 miles. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked skeptical. One, a heavy-set man with a permanent scowl, looked openly hostile. That one, Silas murmured to Gray during a recess. Back row far right. He's not on our side. I noticed. His name's Horace Pendleton. Runs a lumber operation north of here. Connected to Cobb? Maybe, probably, but I couldn't prove it enough to get him removed. So we've got at least one vote against us no matter what. Looks that way. Silas rubbed his face. What do? We convince the other 11 that Ruth is telling the truth. We make them feel what she felt, and we hope that's enough. The second day, Daniel took the stand. He looked smaller somehow, sitting in that wooden chair, with the entire courtroom staring at him. His hands shook. His voice cracked on the oath. Mr. Reeves, Gray began, how long did you work for Jedediah Cobb? 4 years, sir. And in that time, what were your duties? Daniel swallowed hard. I supervised the children, made sure they worked, made sure they didn't run. And if they did run, we brought them back. How? Silence. Daniel's eyes found Ruth's in the crowd. She stared back at him, her face unreadable. However, we had to, he said quietly. Tracking, dogs, sometimes violence. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Judge Crawford banged his gavel. Continue, Mr. Gray. Mr. Reeves, did you ever witness Jedediah Cobb physically abuse the children in his care? Yes, sir, many times. Can you describe what you saw? Daniel's voice dropped. Beatings, whippings, starvation as punishment, children locked in sheds overnight in winter. Children worked until they collapsed. He paused. Children who died. Objection. Morrison was on his feet. This is hearsay and speculation. I was there. Daniel's voice cracked. I saw it. I held them down while he stopped, choking on the words. Mr. Reeves. Judge Crawford's voice was gentle. Take a moment. Daniel covered his face with his hands. His shoulders shook. The courtroom was utterly silent. Finally, Daniel lowered his hands. His cheeks were wet, but his voice was steady now. I know what I did was wrong. I know I'll have to answer for it someday. But I'm here now telling the truth because those children deserved better. They deserved someone to speak for them. He looked directly at Ruth. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Ruth didn't respond. but something shifted in her expression. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something. Morrison's cross-examination was brutal. "Mr. Reeves, isn't it true that you're testifying against Mr. Cobb in exchange for immunity from prosecution?" "No, sir. I was offered immunity, but I refused it." "You refused immunity?" "Yes, sir. I figured if I'm going to tell the truth, I should face the consequences too, whatever they are." Morrison faltered. That clearly wasn't the answer he'd expected. "Isn't it true that you have a personal grudge against Mr. Cobb?" "I don't know if I'd call it a grudge. I'd call it a conscience. A conscience that suddenly appeared after 4 years of loyal service. It was always there." Daniel's voice was quiet. "I just didn't have the courage to listen to it. Not until I met Ruth. Not until I saw a little girl almost die trying to escape what I was a part of." "So you're saying this child, this Ruth, inspired your sudden moral awakening?" "I'm saying she showed me what courage looks like. Real courage. The kind where you'd rather die than go back to being a slave." The word hung in the air. Slave. In a territory that was supposed to be free. Morrison tried a few more questions, but the damage was done. Daniel stepped down, looking drained but somehow lighter. "You did good," Silas told him during the recess. "I told the truth, that's all." Sometimes that's everything. The third day, the other witnesses testified. 3 of Cobb's former workers took the stand one after another and told the jury that the camp was well run, that the children were treated fairly, that Cobb was a generous man who'd been unfairly accused. Silas watched Ruth's face as they spoke, saw the way her fists clenched, the way her jaw tightened. "They're lying," she whispered. "I know." Why would they lie? Because Cobb pays them, because they're scared, because some people would rather swallow poison than face the truth. Will the jury believe them? Silas looked at the 12 men in the box. Some looked convinced by the testimony. Others looked uncertain. "I don't know," he admitted. "But you're up tomorrow, and when you tell your story, you're going to make them believe you." "What if I can't?" "You can." "But what if—" "Ruth." Silas took her hands in his. "I've seen you survive things that would destroy most people. I've seen you choose hope when you had every reason to give up. I've seen you trust when trusting was the hardest thing in the world." He squeezed her hands. "You are the bravest person I know. And tomorrow you're going to walk into that courtroom and you're going to tell your story. Not because it's easy, because it's right. And because those other kids, the ones still out there, the ones who never got away, they need someone to speak for them." Ruth's eyes filled with tears. "I'm scared." "I know. Be scared. Do it anyway. That's what brave is." The 4th day. Ruth's testimony. She walked to the witness stand alone, her steps measured, her head held high. She wore the blue dress Emmy had picked out. "It brings out your eyes," Emmy had said, and her hair was braided neatly down her back. She looked small in that big wooden chair. Small and young and fragile. But her voice when she spoke the oath was steady. "Ruth," Thomas Gray began gently, "can you tell the court how you came to be at Mr. Cobb's work camp?" Ruth took a breath. "My mama died when I was 5. Fever took her. After that I lived on the streets in Helena. I ate what I could find, slept where I could hide." "And how did you meet Mr. Cobb?" "He found me. I was maybe 6 then. He said he'd give me food and a place to sleep if I worked for him." Ruth's voice dropped. "I didn't know what kind of work." "Can you tell the court what kind of work it was?" "Logging, cutting trees, hauling timber, from before sunrise to after dark." Ruth's hands twisted in her lap. "If we were too slow, they didn't feed us. If we complained, they beat us." "Did Mr. Cobb personally participate in these beatings?" "Yes, sir. He liked it. He'd smile while he did it. Said it built character." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Judge Crawford silenced it with a look. "Ruth, can you tell the court about the other children at the camp?" "There were about 20 of us, sometimes more. The number changed. Why did it change? Ruth was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely audible. Some died. Can you tell the court how they died? Accidents, sickness, cold. Ruth looked up and her eyes found Cobb's across the courtroom. He stared back at her, his face a mask of contempt. There was a boy named Samuel. He tried to run away. Mr. Cobb's men caught him. They beat him so bad he couldn't walk. Then they left him in the shed overnight, in January. When they opened the door in the morning, he was frozen solid. A woman in the gallery gasped. One of the jurors, the one Silas had worried about, looked away. Were there other deaths like Samuel's? Yes, sir, many. And where are these children buried? In the north field, behind the tree line. Mr. Cobb said nobody would ever find them there. Nobody would ever care. Gray let the silence stretch. Then, Ruth, why did you run away? Because I knew I was going to die if I stayed. Ruth's voice strengthened. I watched children die for 3 years. I knew I'd be next, so I ran. I didn't care if they caught me. Dying free was better than living like that. And you were found by Mr. Silas Thornton at the Willow Creek Summer Fair. Yes, sir. I collapsed at the auction ground. I was sick, starving. I thought I was dead. Ruth's voice cracked. But he saved me, he and his children. They took me in when nobody else would. They gave me a home, a family. One final question, Ruth. Gray's voice was soft. Why are you here today? Why testify after everything you've been through? Ruth looked at the jury. 12 men who held her fate in their hands. Because the other children can't, she said simply. Because the ones who died deserve someone to tell their story. Because Mr. Cobb needs to answer for what he did. She paused. And because I'm not afraid of him anymore. I used to be. I used to think he was so powerful, so untouchable. But he's not. He's just a man. A cruel small man who hurts children because it makes him feel strong. Her voice hardened. I'm not afraid of him. And I'm not going to let him hurt anyone else. Not ever again. The courtroom was silent. Then Morrison rose for cross-examination, and everything changed. Ruth. His voice was silky condescending. You've told quite a story. Very dramatic. Very emotional. It's the truth. Is it? Or is it what Mr. Thornton coached you to say? Nobody coached me. Really? You've been living with Mr. Thornton for how long now? About 2 months. 2 months. And in that time he's fed you, clothed, given you a home. He's even trying to adopt you. Isn't that right? Yes, sir. So you have quite a lot to gain by making Mr. Cobb look bad. Don't you? Ruth's chin lifted. I have nothing to gain by lying. Don't you? If Mr. Cobb wins this case, you go back to his custody. But if he loses, you stay with Mr. Thornton, in a nice house, with plenty of food, with a family that clearly adores you. That's not why I'm testifying. Then why revenge spite? A little girl's fantasy of getting back at the man who disciplined her. Objection. Gray was on his feet. Withdrawn. Morrison smiled. Ruth, isn't it true that Mr. Cobb was often forced to discipline you because you were lazy? Disobedient, a troublemaker? No. Isn't it true that you stole food from the camp before you ran away? I took bread. I was starving. So you admit to theft. I admit to trying to survive. And isn't it true that you've always been a liar, that even your own mother called you a liar before she died? Something snapped in Ruth's eyes. Don't you talk about my mama. I'm simply asking. My mama loved me. She died protecting me from men like you. Ruth's voice rose. She worked herself to death so I could have a chance, and I'm not going to sit here and let you use her memory to hurt me. Ruth? No, she was crying now, but her voice was strong. You want to know why I'm testifying? Because my mama deserved better. Because the children who died at that camp deserved better. Because every scared, hungry, beaten child in this territory deserves someone who'll stand up and say enough. She pointed directly at Cobb. "That man is a murderer. He killed children with his bare hands and buried them in unmarked graves and slept like a baby every night. And I'm not afraid to say it anymore. I'm not afraid of him anymore. I'm not afraid of any of you." The courtroom erupted. Judge Crawford banged his gavel repeatedly, calling for order. Morrison tried to continue his questioning, but Ruth wouldn't be silenced. "I know what I lived through. I know what I saw. And you can call me a liar all you want, but the truth is the truth, and no amount of money or power can change it." "Order." Crawford's voice thundered. "Order in this court." Silence fell. Ruth sat in the witness chair chest, heaving, tears streaming down her face. Crawford looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at Morrison. "Do you have any further questions for this witness, counselor?" Morrison hesitated, looked at the jury, looked at Ruth. "No, Your Honor. The defense rests." "The witness may step down." Ruth walked back to where Silas waited. Her legs were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. But she held her head high. Silas caught her as she reached him, pulled her into his arms. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. "So proud. Did I do okay?" "You did more than okay. You were magnificent." The closing arguments took another full day. Gray built his case methodically, walking through the evidence, the testimony, the undeniable pattern of abuse and death. Morrison tried to paint Cobb as a misunderstood philanthropist, a victim of ungrateful children and scheming rivals. But the damage was done. Ruth's testimony had broken something open in that courtroom. The jury had seen the truth in her eyes, heard it in her voice. Now all they could do was wait. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Silas sat with his children in a small room off the main courthouse, trying not to think about what would happen if they lost. Trying not to imagine Ruth being dragged back to that camp. Trying not to calculate how many states they'd have to cross to disappear forever. "Daddy?" Toby tugged his sleeve. "What if the bad man wins?" "He won't." "But what if he does?" Silas looked at his son, 6 years old and already learning that the world didn't always play fair. "Then we figure something else out," he said honestly. "We don't give up. We don't stop fighting. We find another way." "Promise?" "Promise." Emmy sat with Ruth on a hard wooden bench, their hands intertwined. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. Daniel paced by the window, too anxious to sit. Every few minutes, he'd look at Ruth, then look away, like he was working up courage to say something. Finally, Ruth spoke first. "Mr. Daniel." He froze. "Yes. Thank you for testifying. He swallowed hard. "It was the least I could do. It was more than most people would do." Ruth paused. "I still have nightmares about you, about what you did. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so... But I also remember what you said on the stand, about me showing you what courage looks like." Ruth looked at him directly. "I think maybe you've got some courage too, hidden deep, buried under all the bad stuff. But it's there." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve..." "Maybe not. But maybe that's not the point." Ruth squeezed Emmy's hand. "Maybe the point is what you do now, who you become. Whether you keep running from what you did, or whether you face it and try to be better. I want to be better. Then be better. It won't change the past, but it might change the future." The door opened. Thomas Gray stepped in, his face carefully neutral. "The jury's back." They filed into the courtroom, all of them, and took their seats. The gallery was packed. Every eye was fixed on the jury box. The foreman stood, an older man with weathered hands and kind eyes. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" "We have, Your Honor." "On the charge of murder in the first degree, how do you find..." A pause. Endless. Eternal. "Guilty." The courtroom exploded. Shouts, cheers, cries of outrage. Judge Crawford banged his gavel, calling for order. On the charge of child abuse in the first degree, guilty. On the charge of false imprisonment, guilty. On the charge of fraud, guilty. 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 Silas pulled Ruth into his arms as she sobbed. Emmy wrapped herself around both of them. Toby clung to his father's leg, crying without understanding why. Across the courtroom, Cobb sat motionless, his face a mask of disbelief. Morrison was already packing his briefcase, refusing to meet his client's eyes. Judge Crawford waited for the noise to subside. Then he spoke. "Jedediah Cobb, you have been found guilty on all counts. Given the severity of your crimes and the suffering you have caused, I sentence you to hang by the neck until dead. Sentence to be carried out within 30 days. Cobb's face went white. "You can't. Remove the prisoner." They dragged him away, screaming, cursing, threatening revenge on everyone who'd testified against him. His voice echoed through the courthouse until the heavy doors slammed shut behind him. And then it was over. Ruth pulled back from Silas's embrace, her face wet with tears, her eyes shining with something she'd never allowed herself to feel before. Hope. Real hope. Unshakable hope. "Is it over?" she whispered. "Is it really over?" "It's really over. He can't hurt me anymore. Never again. He's never going to hurt anyone again." Ruth looked around the courtroom, at the jury filing out, at the spectators gathering their things, at the empty chair where Cobb had sat. "I did it," she said wonderingly. "I really did it." "You did more than that." Silas cupped her face in his hands. "You saved every child he would have hurt in the future. You gave a voice to everyone he silenced. You showed the whole territory what courage looks like. I couldn't have done it without you, without all of you. That's what family's for." Family. The word wrapped around Ruth like a blanket, warm and safe and real. "Can we go home now?" she asked quietly. Silas smiled. "Yes, sweetheart. We can go home." They walked out of the courthouse together, the five of them, into the bright September sunshine. Behind them, the building stood solid and imposing, a monument to justice served. Ahead of them, the road stretched long and dusty, leading back to the ranch, back to the life they'd built together. Ruth walked between Emmy and Toby, holding both their hands. Silas walked beside them, Daniel trailing a few steps behind. Halfway to the hotel, Ruth stopped. "What is it?" Silas asked. She looked back at the courthouse, then forward at the road. "I spent so long being afraid, so long running. I forgot what it felt like to walk somewhere, to know where I was going, to believe I'd actually get there. And now," Ruth smiled. It was a real smile, full and bright, the kind Silas had only seen glimpses of before. "Now I'm going home," she said. "And nobody's ever going to take that away from me again." They continued down the street, a family forged not by blood, but by choice, by courage, by the stubborn refusal to let cruelty have the last word. And somewhere watching from wherever the dead go, Martha Thornton smiled. Her husband had found his way back to love. Her children had found a sister. And a little girl who'd been told she was nothing, worthless, cursed, had proven the whole world wrong. The ride back to the ranch took 2 days, but it felt like flying. Ruth sat in the wagon bed with Emmy and Toby, talking more than Silas had ever heard her talk. About the trial, about the verdict, about what it felt like to finally be free. "I keep waiting to wake up," she admitted on the second morning. "I keep thinking this is all a dream, that I'll open my eyes and be back at the camp." "It's not a dream," Emmy said firmly. "This is real. We're real. And you're never going back there." "How do you know?" "Because Daddy promised, and Daddy never breaks his promises." Ruth looked at Silas, who was driving the wagon, his broad back silhouetted against the morning sky. "He really doesn't, Does he? Not once, not ever. Something settled in Ruth's chest. Something that felt like peace. They crested the final ridge just before sunset, and there it was, the ranch spread out below them, golden in the fading light. The house with its crooked chimney, the barn with the door that needed fixing, the corral where the horses waited. Home. "We're here," Toby shouted, bouncing in his seat. "We're home." Ruth didn't say anything. She just stared at the place that had become hers, this impossible gift she still couldn't quite believe she deserved. Emmy squeezed her hand. "Welcome home, sister." Sister. The word wrapped around Ruth like a warm blanket. "Yeah," she whispered. "Home." The first week back was chaos in the best possible way. Word of the trial had spread across the territory, and people came from miles around to offer congratulations. Margaret Whitmore arrived with a pie and stayed for dinner. The Pattersons brought fresh vegetables from their garden. Even Pastor Williams stopped by hat in hand to apologize for how the church had treated Ruth. "I was wrong," he said, standing awkwardly on the porch. "What we did, what I allowed, it wasn't Christian. It wasn't right." Ruth studied him for a long moment. "No, it wasn't. I hope you can forgive me. Someday." "Maybe someday." Ruth's voice was even. "But not today. Today I'm just gonna enjoy being home." Williams nodded, shamefaced, and left. "You didn't have to be so hard on him," Silas said quietly. "Yes, I did." Ruth looked up at him. "Forgiveness has to be earned. You taught me that." "When did I teach you that?" "When you said change means nothing without action. He can apologize all he wants, but until he does something different, the words don't mean much." Silas felt a swell of pride. This girl, his girl, had learned so much, come so far. "You're right," he said. "Words don't mean much. Actions do." "So what action are we taking next?" "Funny you should ask." Silas pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "This came from Thomas Gray this morning. The adoption paperwork is ready. We can file as soon as we get back to Boulder." Ruth's face went still. "Adoption?" "If you want it. If you're ready." You mean I'd really be my daughter? Legally? Officially? Forever?" Silas knelt to meet her eyes. "But only if that's what you want. This is your choice, Ruth. It's always been your choice." Ruth's lip trembled. "I thought after everything, I thought maybe you'd change your mind." "Why would I change my mind?" "Because I'm trouble. Because I brought Cobb to your door. Because I almost got your family killed." "Ruth." Silas took her hands. "You didn't bring trouble to my door. You brought hope. You brought courage. You showed my children what it means to fight for what's right. But—" "No buts. You're the best thing that's happened to this family since Martha died. And I'm not letting you go. Not now. Not ever." He squeezed her hands. "So what do you say? You want to make this official?" Ruth's eyes filled with tears. "Yes. Please. Yes." Silas pulled her into his arms, and she clung to him like he was the only solid thing in a spinning world. "Then it's settled," he murmured against her hair. "We leave for Boulder next week." They left on a Tuesday morning, all four of them, plus Daniel, who'd asked to come along. "You sure?" Silas had asked. "Boulder's where you testified. People might recognize you." "I know, but I want to be there. I want to see it through." Daniel's jaw tightened. "And maybe afterward I can figure out what comes next. For me." "What do you mean?" "I've been thinking about the other kids, the ones from Cobb's camp. The marshal said they need homes, families, someone to take care of them." "You want to help with that?" "I want to do something that matters." Daniel looked at Ruth, who was helping Emmy load the wagon. "She taught me that, you know, that it's never too late to start over. Never too late to do better." "It's not too late for you either." "Maybe. I hope so." The ride to Boulder was easier this time. The weather held, the roads were dry, and Ruth's spirits were higher than Silas had ever seen them. She chattered the whole way, asking questions about everything: the adoption process, what would happen at the courthouse, whether she'd have to speak. "You won't have to do anything except sign your name," Silas assured her. "What if I mess it up?" "Then you try again. That's how life works." "What if the judge says no?" "He won't." "But what if—" Ruth. Silas stopped the wagon and turned to face her. "I need you to listen to me. Really listen." She fell silent, her eyes wide. "That judge is going to look at you, at all of us, and he's going to see a family. Not a perfect family. Not a family that had it easy. But a family that chose each other. That fought for each other. That survived things that would destroy most people." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "And he's going to say yes. Because that's what judges do when they see love. Real love. The kind that doesn't quit." Ruth's chin wobbled. "How do you know?" "Because I know love when I see it. And I see it every time I look at you." She threw her arms around his neck, nearly knocking him off the wagon seat. "I love you too, Daddy." The word hit Silas like a thunderbolt. Daddy. She'd never called him that before. Never let herself. He held her tight, his heart so full it hurt. "I know, sweetheart. I know." Boulder was crowded with people when they arrived. Farmers bringing crops to market. Travelers passing through. Families going about their daily business. But Silas noticed something different this time. People looked at them, at Ruth, not with suspicion or hostility, but with something else. Recognition. Respect. "That's her, isn't it?" a woman whispered to her companion as they passed. "The girl who took down Cobb. Brave little thing. Can you imagine?" "I heard she testified for 3 hours straight. Never backed down once." Ruth heard them too. Her shoulders straightened. Her chin lifted. "They're talking about me," she whispered. "They are. They don't sound angry." "Why would they be angry?" "Because—" Ruth stopped, frowned. "I don't know. I guess I just expected everyone to hate you." Something like that. Silas put a hand on her shoulder. "You did something brave, Ruth. Something most people never do. You stood up to power. You told the truth. You won." "It doesn't feel like winning." "Why not?" "Because I keep waiting for something bad to happen. Keep waiting for someone to take it all away. That feeling might not go away for a while. Maybe not ever completely." Silas squeezed her shoulder. "But that's okay. You don't have to feel like you deserve good things to actually deserve them." Ruth thought about that. That's confusing. Life is confusing. Love even more so. But it's worth it anyway. The courthouse looked different in the daylight. During the trial, it had seemed dark and imposing, a place of judgment and fear. Now, with sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of children playing in the street outside, it felt almost welcoming. Thomas Gray met them at the door, a smile on his usually serious face. "Ready." "Ready," Silas said. "Ruth, how are you feeling?" "Scared, excited, like I might throw up." Gray laughed. "That's perfectly normal. This way." They followed him through familiar hallways to a small chamber at the back of the building. Judge Crawford was already there, seated behind a simple wooden desk. "Mr. Thornton, children." His voice was warm. "Please sit." They arranged themselves in chairs facing the desk. Silas, Emmy, Toby, Ruth. Daniel stood against the wall watching. "I've reviewed the adoption petition," Crawford said, shuffling papers. "Everything appears to be in order, but before I sign, I have some questions." "Of course, Your Honor." Crawford looked at Ruth. "Young lady, do you understand what's happening here today?" "Yes, sir. Mr. Thornton Silas wants to adopt me, make me his daughter for real." "And is this what you want?" "Yes, sir. More than anything." "Why?" Ruth blinked. "Sir? Why do you want this man to be your father, in your own words?" Ruth was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Because he saved my life. Not just once, over and over. He found me when I was dying, and he didn't look away. He took me home when everyone else told him not to. He protected me when bad men came. He believed me when I told my story. Her voice strengthened. But it's not just that. It's the small things too. The way he makes sure I eat before anyone else. The way he checks on me at night when he thinks I'm sleeping. The way he listens, really listens when I talk. She looked at Silas, her eyes bright with tears. I've never had a daddy before. Not a real one. But if I could choose anyone in the whole world, I'd choose him. Crawford nodded slowly. And you, Mr. Thornton, why do you want to adopt this child? Silas cleared his throat. Because she's my daughter. Has been since the moment I pulled her out of the dirt at that auction ground. Papers are just making official what's already true. Is that all? No. Silas leaned forward. My wife died 3 years ago. After that I thought I was done. Done loving. Done hoping. Done taking chances. I came to these mountains to hide from the world. To keep my children safe by keeping them isolated. He glanced at Emmy and Toby, who were watching him with wide eyes. But Ruth showed me that safety isn't about hiding. It's about fighting for what matters. It's about choosing love even when it's hard, even when it hurts. His voice cracked. She didn't just become part of my family. She made us a family again, a real one, the kind Martha always dreamed we'd be. Crawford was quiet for a moment. Then he picked up his pen. I've seen a lot of families in this courtroom. Good ones, bad ones, broken ones trying to put themselves back together. He signed the bottom of the document with a flourish. But I don't think I've ever seen one quite like yours. He handed the paper to Silas. Congratulations, Mr. Thornton. You have a daughter. Ruth's sob echoed through the chamber. She launched herself at Silas, who caught her and held her tight, while Emmy and Toby piled on, all of them crying and laughing at the same time. It's official, Emmy kept saying. It's really official. You're my sister for real. I know, Ruth choked out. I know. Daniel watched from his place against the wall, tears streaming down his face. Judge Crawford pretended not to notice, busying himself with paperwork until the family collected themselves. One more thing, Crawford said when they'd finally separated. Ruth, now that the adoption is complete, you'll need a full legal name. Do you know what you'd like it to be? Ruth hesitated, looked at Silas, at Emmy and Toby, at the family she'd somehow found against all odds. Ruth Martha Thornton, she said quietly, after my mama, and after the mama I never got to meet. Emmy started crying all over again. Silas couldn't speak at all. A fine name, Crawford said, writing it on the document. Welcome to the family, Ruth Martha Thornton. They celebrated that night with dinner at the best restaurant in Boulder. Ruth had never been to a restaurant before, had never eaten food she hadn't worked for, and the experience overwhelmed her. They just bring it to you, she whispered, and you don't have to do anything. You have to pay, Toby said practically. Daddy pays lots of money. But I don't have money. You don't need money. Emmy patted her hand. Daddy pays for all of us. That's what families do. Ruth stared at her plate, roast chicken and potatoes and fresh bread, like it might disappear if she blinked. Eat, Silas said gently. It's not going anywhere. She ate, slowly at first, then faster, then slowing down again, when she remembered she didn't have to rush anymore. Nobody was going to take her food. Nobody was going to punish her for enjoying it. After dinner, they walked through town together, Ruth holding Silas's hand on one side and Emmy's on the other. Toby ran ahead, chasing fireflies that were just beginning to emerge in the warm evening air. Daddy, Ruth's voice was hesitant. Can I ask you something? Always. What happens now? Now that everything's official. What do you mean? I mean... She struggled to find the words. Before I was always working towards something, surviving, escaping, testifying, getting adopted. But now all of that's done, so what do I do? Silas stopped walking, knelt to meet her eyes. Now you live, he said simply. You wake up in the morning and eat breakfast and do your chores and play with your brother and sister. You learn to read better and maybe someday go to a real school. You grow up. You become whoever you're meant to be. That sounds scary. Easy. Silas laughed. It's not. Trust me. Life is hard, even when it's good. There'll be days you get sick, days you fight with Emmy, days you miss your mama so much it hurts to breathe. Then how is it better? Because you won't face any of it alone. Silas squeezed her hand. That's what family means, Ruth. It means you never have to carry anything by yourself again. Ruth's eyes filled with tears for what felt like the 100th time that day. I don't know how to do that. I've been alone my whole life. I don't know how to lean on people. Then we'll teach you, just like you taught us. Taught you what? That courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being terrified and showing up anyway. Silas pulled her into a hug. You showed up, Ruth. Every single day. Even when it would have been easier to quit. Even when everyone told you it was hopeless. You showed up. So did you. I learned from the best. They made it back to the ranch 3 days later, arriving just as the sun was setting. Ruth jumped down from the wagon before it had fully stopped running toward the house like she couldn't wait another second. Ruth, Emmy called after her. Wait for us. But Ruth didn't wait. She burst through the front door, ran through the kitchen up to the loft that had become her room. She stood there breathing hard, looking at everything the bed Emmy had helped her make, the quilt Silas had given her, the small collection of treasures she'd accumulated over the past months. A feather from a bluebird, a smooth stone from the creek, a drawing Toby had made of their family, all 4 of them holding hands. Her things, her place, her home. Emmy appeared at the top of the ladder panting. What are you doing? Looking. At what? At everything. Ruth turned to her. Is this really mine? All of it. Of course it's yours. It's always been yours. But now it's legal. Legal's just a word. Emmy climbed into the loft and sat beside her. You've been my sister since the day Daddy brought you home. Papers don't change that. I know, but... Ruth picked up Toby's drawing, traced the figures with her finger. I've never had anything that was really mine before. Not that couldn't be taken away. This can't be taken away. Not ever. You promise. Emmy took her hand. I promise. Cross my heart, hope to die, stick a needle in my eye. Ruth laughed a real laugh, full and bright. That's gross. That's tradition. Mama taught me. They sat together in the gathering darkness, 2 sisters who'd found each other against all odds, holding hands while the world settled into peace around them. The months that followed were the happiest of Ruth's life. She learned to ride, really ride, not just sit on a horse while someone led it. She learned to read well enough to help Toby with his letters. She learned to bake bread with Emmy, to mend fences with Silas, to find joy in the simple rhythm of days that followed one after another without fear. But the biggest change was Daniel. He'd stayed on after the trial, helping around the ranch while he figured out his next move. At first, Ruth avoided him, couldn't look at him without remembering, without flinching. But slowly, inch by inch, that changed too. Mr. Daniel. Ruth found him in the barn one evening, brushing down the horses. Can I ask you something? He went still. Of course. Why did you do it back at the camp? Why did you help Mr. Cobb hurt us? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Because I was scared. Because I told myself I had no choice. Because it was easier to be cruel than to be kind. That's not a good reason. No, it's not. He turned to face her. I could give you excuses, tell you about my own childhood, my own hurts, my own fears. But the truth is, none of that matters. I did terrible things. Things I'll carry for the rest of my life. Things I can never undo. Then why are you still here? Because you gave me a chance. You and your family. Daniel's voice cracked. I don't deserve it. I know that. But I'm trying every day. I'm trying to be worthy of it. Ruth studied him. This man who'd held her down while she screamed. Who'd stood by while children died. Who'd run away from his own conscience for years, and who'd finally chosen to do better. I don't forgive you, she said quietly. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I understand. But I don't hate you anymore. And I think... She paused. I think maybe that's enough. For now. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, Ruth. Don't thank me. Just keep trying. Keep being better. That's all any of us can do. She walked away, leaving him alone with his horses and his thoughts and his long road toward redemption. Spring came early that year, melting the snow and filling the valleys with wildflowers. Silas stood on the porch one morning, coffee in hand, watching his children play in the yard. Emmy was teaching Ruth to skip rope. Toby was chasing chickens. Daniel was fixing the barn door he'd promised to fix for months. Beautiful, isn't it? Silas turned. Margaret Whitmore had ridden up without him noticing, her horse still breathing hard from the trail. It is. What brings you out this way? News. Margaret dismounted and pulled a newspaper from her saddlebag. Thought you'd want to see this. She handed it to him. The headline made his heart stop. Cobb execution carried out. Notorious child abuser hanged at dawn. It's done, Margaret said quietly. He's gone. Silas read the article twice. 3 times. Let the words sink in. Ruth should know, he said finally. She deserves to know. I thought the same. That's why I wrote out. Margaret looked toward the children. How is she really? Better every day. But there's still nights she wakes up screaming. Still moments when she flinches from shadows. Silas folded the newspaper. Some wounds take longer to heal. Some never heal completely. But they don't have to. Scars don't mean you're broken. They mean you survived. Silas called the children inside. Sat them all down around the kitchen table. Showed Ruth the newspaper. She read it slowly, her lips moving with each word. When she finished, she looked up at Silas with an expression he couldn't quite read. He's really dead. He's really dead. He can never hurt anyone again. Never. Ruth set down the newspaper. Her hands were steady. Her eyes were dry. Good, she said simply. Good. Then she stood up, walked to the door, and went back outside to skip rope with Emmy. Silas watched her go, marveling at the resilience of this child. The strength, the determination to keep living, keep hoping, keep loving, despite everything she'd been through. She's going to be okay, Margaret said. Yeah, I think she is. And you, how are you doing? Silas considered the question. For the first time in years, he didn't have to think about the answer. I'm good. Really good. Better than I've been since Martha died. She'd be proud, you know. Martha. Proud of all of it. I know. Silas smiled. I feel her sometimes. In the way Emmy takes care of Ruth. In the way Toby's learning to be brave. In the way this family keeps choosing each other day after day, no matter how hard it gets. That's love. That's love. 5 years later. Ruth Thornton. Ruth Martha. Thornton, daughter of Silas, sister to Emmy and Toby, stood at the edge of the property where she'd once collapsed, dying in the dirt. She was 13 now, taller, stronger, still scarred, but the scars had faded to thin white lines that barely showed anymore. You okay? She turned. Emmy stood behind her 18, and beautiful, her mother's face looking back at Ruth through familiar eyes. Just thinking. About what? About how different everything is, how different I am. Emmy came to stand beside her. Good different or bad different? Good. Definitely good. Ruth looked out across the valley. I used to think I was cursed, that everyone who loved me would suffer, that I didn't deserve good things. And now I know that was a lie. A lie I told myself because the world told it to me first. Ruth turned to face her sister. I deserve love. I deserve family. I deserve to be happy. Everyone does. That's a big change. It took a long time, a lot of bad nights, a lot of hard conversations. Ruth smiled. But I got there. We all got there. Silas appeared on the porch, waving them in for dinner. Behind him, Toby, 11 now, and shooting up like a weed, was setting the table with careful concentration. Coming, Emmy called. She looked at Ruth. Ready? Ruth took one last look at the valley, at the place where her old life had ended and her new one had begun. Yeah, she said. I'm ready. They walked back to the house together, where dinner was waiting, where Silas was laughing at something Toby had said, where the smell of fresh bread filled the air and the evening light streamed through clean windows. Ruth paused at the door, breathed it in, let herself feel it. Home, family, love. All the things she'd once thought impossible. All the things she'd fought so hard to find. Ruth. Silas looked up from the table. You coming? Yeah, Daddy. I'm coming. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Outside, the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and purple. The wind stirred the grass in the valley below. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled its evening song. And in a small ranch house in the foothills of Wyoming, a family sat down to dinner together. Not perfect, not without scars, but whole, complete, bound together by something stronger than blood, stronger than law, stronger than all the cruelty the world could throw at them. Love. The kind that doesn't quit, the kind that shows up day after day, year after year, through every trial and every triumph, the kind that makes strangers into family, the kind that lasts forever. Ruth looked around the table at Emmy laughing at Toby complaining about vegetables, at Silas watching them all with quiet joy, and felt something settle deep in her chest. Peace. Real peace. The kind she'd never known existed. Thank you, she whispered, so quiet no one heard. But maybe they didn't need to hear. Maybe they already knew. Because that's what family was. Knowing without being told. Loving without being asked. Staying without being begged. Ruth Martha Thornton had spent the first 8 years of her life learning how to survive. She would spend the rest of it learning how to live. And that, in the end, was the greatest gift of all.